We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 92a. On the previous Amud, Papa said that Rava tested us with the following question: Nischei Rechela Bekama. How much is the Nesachim, the libations of Rechela, which is a ewe, a female sheep? And Rashi explains Nischei Rechela Bekama Yayin Hitzrich. How much wine does it need? Shahaya Ritzono L'Nasosein, because Rava wanted to test us. Im Hayinu Mafrishin Bein Zachar L'Nekeva. Will we make a distinction between the male and the female in this case of sheep? Or in Yenacher Bein Rechela L'Kivsa, will we make a distinction between the older female sheep and the younger female sheep? The Rechela would be 2 years old, the Kivsa would be 1 year old. V'amrinan lei, and we said to him, the Gemara is about to say, Mi masnisan he, but Mesechet Shkolim, the answer to this question is a Mishnah in Mesechet Shkolim. We'll read first the Gemara. Again, Upashtina lei, we answered him, Mi masnisan, from this Mishnah in Shkolim, Gedi mishamesh nischet tzon shel gedolim, v'shel ketanim, shel zucharim, v'shel nekevos. The goat, it works for the nesachim, the libations of tzon, of the flock, whether they're old or young, whether male or female, chutz mishel elim, with the exception of elim of rams. The ram is the older, essentially the older male sheep, 2 years old, so that's the only exception. Otherwise, we don't make any distinctions within that female category. And again, Rashi continues and explains, it's a Mishnah in Mesechet Shkolim. Arba chosamos hayu b'mikdash. There were 4 chosamos in the mikdash. Essentially, these were vouchers. The person would come and pay the money and get the voucher from the treasure of the Beis HaMikdash, which would be used for the nesachim. And the 4 were Egel, Zachar, Gedi, Chote. Those were the 4 of them. And Gedi Mishamish Nischet So. Now the Gedi would be used for the nesachim, a flock. Shemeoso chosim shekasav all of Gedi, meaning from that particular chosam, that voucher upon which was written Gedi, Hayulochin Nesachim LeKarban Tzon. They would buy the Nesachim for a carbon of Tzon. And that would be Bein Gedolim, Bein Ketanim, whether old or young, Bein Zacharim, Bein Nekevos, whether male or female. Dahainu Nami LeKivs Rechela, which would include the young female sheep and the older female sheep. The Kulan Nischei and Shav, and all of them, the point is, have the same Nesachim. Chutz Mishal Elam, except for Elam, which is the older male sheep. Shalo Hayu Notlan Misham Letzorach Nischei Elam. They wouldn't use that voucher for the Nischei Elam. Lafisha Ein Nisachim Shav because that's not equal in terms of nesachim. Tahani da keves hayutan reviyas ahin lisaron echad, because the keves that required a quarter of a hin for 1 isaron. And misha yimavakesh nesachim holach etzel Yochanan hamamun ala chosamos. Somebody who needed nesachim would go to Yochanan, who was appointed over that, over the vouchers. V'nosen al nesachav, and he would give the money for it. V'nosen lo chosam, and he would get this voucher. V'holach etzel gizbor hamamun ala yain. He would then go to the treasurer appointed over the wine. V'nosen lo chosam, give him the voucher. V'nosen lo nesachim, and he would then give him the proper amount of the nesachim. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Kol karbonos hatzibor ein bohen smicha. All communal karbonos, they don't have smicha, which is leading upon the animal. Chutz min hapar habal kol hamitzvos, except for the par that comes for all commandments. That's the par helam davar shel tzibor. That's if the community sins. Useir hamishtalech, and also the goat that is sent away on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Shimon says, Af seir avodas kochavim, so to the goat that's brought for the communal sin of avodah zara. Kol karbonos hayachid to unin smicha. Now, all individuals' karbanos, they do require smicha, leaning upon the animal. Chutz min habechor v'hamaiser v'hapesach, with the exception of the firstborn, maiser behema, which is the 10th animal, the karban pesach. V'hayorish somech umevi nesachim umeimer, and a yorish, which is an heir, he does do smicha, he brings nesachim, and he's able to create tmura. And Rashi explains, hayorish somech al karban aviv la'achar misas aviv. Let's say the heir, the karban of his father dies, and now that karban is around, he does the smicha, the heir does the smicha. Umevi nesachim, he brings nesachim. Shaya aviv chayiv lahavi mazevach, because the father was chayiv to bring libations with the karban. Umeimer, and also in terms of temura, sheyachol lohamir bekarban aviv kaviv, he can make temura. Let's say he says that this should be a substitute. So again, the halach of temura is that the original and the substitute have that kedusha. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanon, the sages taught in the Brisa, called karbanos hatzibor ein bahen smicha chutz mipar habal kol hamitzvos. All karbanos hatzibor, all communal offerings, there's no smicha, there's no leaning upon the animal, except for the par helam davar shel tzibor. Again, that's the par that's brought when the community sins. Useire avodas kochavim, and also the goat that is brought for the communal sin of avodah zara. Divrei Rabbi Shimon, these are the words of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says, Seirei avodas kochavim ein bohen smicha. Seirei avodas kochavim, they do not have smicha. V'yas mi avi tachteim. Now, what do I bring instead of them? Seir hamishtalech. The seir hamishtalech, that is the one that will require smicha. Again, that's the seir, the goat that is sent away on Yom Kippur. The Gemara says, Lo sagid lo ma'il, is it impossible not to bring a replacement? Meaning, what does Rabbi Yehuda mean that I have to replace the seir avodas kochavim? Why does it have to be replaced? And the Gemara answers, Amar Ravina says, Gemiri, because we have a tradition, shtei smichos b'tzibur, that there are two communal offerings which require smicha, so we know there are two. If he took away one, he has to replace it. And the Gemara continues, Amar lo Rabbi Shimon said to him, he said to Rabbi Yehuda, V'halo ein smicha, ela b'bailam, but isn't the halacha of smicha? It's only by the owners. V'zeh Aaron uvanav somchin lo, and this one, Aaron and his sons, they're the ones that are going to be doing the smicha. And they're not really the owners of the animal by the sar hamishtalech. That's the question of Rabbi Shimon. Amar lo, so Rabbi Yehuda said back to Rabbi Shimon, Av zeh, no, even this, Aaron uvanav mischapen bo, it's not true. Because Aaron and his children, they do get a kapara with this animal, and since they get a kapara, they can be considered to be the owners of the animal. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Va'azdu l'taymayu, in this machlokas, they follow their opinions. The Tanyas, we learned in a brayso, V'chiperes mikdash hakodesh, it says he's going to do an atonement for the mikdash hakodesh. What does that refer to? Zel lifnai v'lifnim, this refers to the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kadashim, the Kodesh Kadashim. V'yas ol moed, and when it says the ol moed, what does that refer to? Zehechel, that's the Hechel, what's known as the Kodesh part of the Beis HaMikdash. And Mizbeach kimashmo, the word Mizbeach is reference to the Mizbeach as it is understood. And Yechaper, and the word Yechaper, Elu ha'azaros, that refers to the Azaros, the courtyards of the Beis HaMikdash. And Kohanim is kimashmon, Kohanim, that refers to the Kohanim as understood. Al kol am hakol, and al kol am hakol, Elu Yisrael, that refers to the Yisraelim. And Yechaper, the word Yechaper, Elu haLeviim, that refers to the Leviim. And Hushvu kulam l'chapara achas, all of them are equal for one kapara, one atonement. Shemischaprin besar hamishtalech, they get a kapara through this goat that is sent away. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. And so the idea is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the sar hamishtalech is a kapara essentially for everyone. Rabbi Shimon says, Keshem shadam sar hanasa b'fnim, just like the goat, the blood of the goat that is done in the Beis HaMikdash, mechaper al Yisrael, it's a kapara for Yisrael, al tumas mikdash v'kadasha, for any tumah that occurs in the Beis HaMikdash or with the holy, kach dam hapar, so too the blood of the bull, mechaper al kohanim, that's a kapara for the kohanim, al tumas mikdash v'kadasha, for the tumah of the mikdash and the holy. And kashem shevidoy shel sar hamishtalech, and just like the confession over the sar hamishtalech, mechaper al Yisrael, b'shar averos, that's a kapara for Yisrael for other averos, kach vidoy shel par, so too the confession over the bull, mechaper al kohanim b'shar averos, that's a kapara for the kohanim for other averos. And so you see, according to Rabbi Shimon, the sar hamishtalech is really just for Yisrael. And Rashi Ksav explains, L'taymayu, they follow their reasoning. The ifligu bialma, in general they argue, the Rabbi Yehuda Arun uvanav mischaper misar mishtaleach b'shar averos chutz mitumas mikdash v'kadashav. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Aaron and his sons, they get a kapar from the sar mishtaleach by other averos besides for tumas mikdash v'kadashav. Uchebaylam havebu, so they're like the owners. Well, the Rabbi Shimon ain't mischaper, but according to Rabbi Shimon, there's no such kapara. V'chiberes mikdash hakodesh, this was the interpretation of the pasuk. It says Mikdash HaKodesh, meaning La'achar shegamar ha'azos b'par v'sar shel Yom HaKippurim ksiv b'achrei mos, after the finishing of the sprinklings of the blood by the par and the sar of Yom Kippur, that's where this is written, and it refers to different parts of the Mikdash. Zel lifnai v'lifnim, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, shasir hanasa b'fnim upar mecharpim al tumas Mikdash v'kadoshav shenichnas lifnai v'lifnim. It means to say that that's going to be a kapara for tumas Mikdash v'kadoshav in Kodesh Kadoshim, and then again the various other areas of the Beis HaMikdash. And Rashi Ksav continues, again Rabbi Yehuda says, Hushvu kulan, they're equal, meaning Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Hushvu b'hai yechaper. In terms of this atonement, Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim are the same. Techsiv ala Kohanim v'al kol am hakol yechaper, it says on the Kohanim and all the people. Lomar de mechaper b'sar mishtalech ashar averos. It means they all get this kapara through the sar mishtalech and other averos. The v'tumas mikdash v'kadashav, now by tumas mikdash and kadashav, lekel lememer de mechaper, that you can't say it's a kapara. The hadam hapar mechaper ala Kohanim, because for that, it's the blood of the par that's the kapara for the Kohanim. V'dam sar hapnimi, and the inner goat, the blood of that inner goat, al Yisrael, that's for Yisrael l'divrei hakol, that's according to everyone. And Rabbi Shimon Omer, then Rabbi Shimon says, B'hai shaper ko'armit v'tumas mikdash v'kadashav lo hushvu. Of course, it's true, by tumas mikdash v'kadashav, they're not equal in terms of the Kohanim and Yisrael. The kashem shadam asar, etc. Avol b'hai palgin alach, but I do argue with you in this respect. Kashem shavidei shel sar mishtaleach kach videi shel par. I argue again with regards to the vidoy of the sar hamishtalech. Again, as Rabbi Shimon said, just like the dam sar bifnim is al Yisrael by tumas mikdash v'kadashav, the dam hapar is on Kohanim tumas mikdash v'kadashav, and the vidoy of the sar hamishtalech is Yisrael by other averis, and the vidoy of the par is Kohanim by other averis. And the Gemara continues and says, V'Rabbi Shimon havadai hushvu, but according to Rabbi Shimon, aren't they certainly equated? And the Gemara says, in yes hushvu devnei kapara ninu. Yes, they're equated that they're bnei kapara, but miu kol chad v'chad mechaber b'denafshe. But still, each one is its own particular atonement. As Rashi explains, the kaparach v'Rabbi Shimon hechi matzu l'meimar de'ein kohanim eschaprim b'sar mishalech. How can you say that the kohanim don't get a kapara through the sar mishalech? And then the Gemara said, Havadai hushvu l'chapara achas kohanim levim v'Yisraelim. They certainly are equated in terms of one kapara. But ha yechaper basra, in this last yechaper term, devadai hushvu kohanim levim v'Yisraelim devnei kapara ninu, meaning they're all going to get kapara. Uliola maf b'shar averos, but still, even by other averos, kol chad mischaper ba'apei nafshi kedamron, each one has a unique path to that atonement, as we said. As the Gemara continues and explains, l'Rabbi Yehuda tumas mikdash v'kadosh of Yisrael mechapri b'damsar hanas b'fnim, the kohanim b'parshal Aaron. According to Rabbi Yehuda, by tumas mikdash v'kadosh of Yisrael, they get a kapara through the dam hasoyer of the tznas b'fnim, and the kohanim through the par of Aaron. And b'shar averos, by other averos, eilu v'eilu mechapri b'vidoy sar mishtaleach, they both get the kapara through the confession of the sar mishtaleach. Ul Rabbi Shimon, but according to Rabbi Shimon, b'shar averos nami, by other averos also we make a distinction. Kohanim bevidoy the par mischapri, the kohanim they get kapara through the confession of the par. Kidikatani, as we learned, echad Yisrael v'echad kohanim v'echad kohen Mashiach, whether Yisrael, whether kohanim, whether the kohen that's anointed, the kohen gadol. Ma ben Yisrael the kohanim or the kohen Mashiach. But what's the difference between Yisrael and the kohanim and the kohen Mashiach? Ela shadam hapar mechaper al kohanim al tumas mikdash v'kadoshav. The blood of the par, that's mechaper for the kohanim for tumas mikdash v'kadoshav. Zu divrei Rabbi Yehuda. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. For Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Kishem shadam hasor hanasa b'fnim, just like the inner soyer mechaper al Yisrael is a kapar for Yisrael, kach dam hapar mechaper al kohanim, so too the blood of the par is mechaper for the kohanim, and kishem sheviduyav shel sar mishtaleach mechaper al Yisrael, just like the confession of the sar mishtaleach is a kapar for Yisrael, kach viduyav shel par mechaper al kohanim, so too the confession of the par is the kapara for the kohanim. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught on a brayse of V'samchu ziknei ha'edas yedeim al rosh hapar. It says the ziknei ha'edah, the elders of the congregation, they lean their hands upon the head of the bull. Parto and smicha vein sirei avodas kochavim tun and smicha. The bull requires leaning, but the sirei avodas zara, that does not require smicha. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon says, Parto and smicha bizikanim. The par requires smicha with the elders. Vein sirei avodas kochavim tun and smicha bizikanim. But the sirei avodas zara does not require smicha with the elders. Ella bi Aaron, rather it is with Aaron. The Gemara continues, Uraminu, we have the following contradiction. Hachai, it says in the pasuk, Hachai, the living one. Hachai ton smicha means that the living requires smicha. Ve'in sirei avodas kochavim tun and smicha, but the sirei avodas kochavim, they do not require smicha. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says, Chai ton smicha, the living requires smicha, bi'aron with Aharon. And Rashi Ksaviyat explains, Tanu Rabbanan hapar, v'samchu ziknei ha'edas yedeim al rosh hapar. It says the ziknei ha'edah, they do smicha on the par. This is talking about the par helam davar shal tzibor. And then the Gemara said, Hachai, the living, that's al rosh hasor hachai, that's the living goat. That's talking about the sor la'azazel. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Beis Amid Beis.